UFC 297 marks the first pay-per-view card of the year, and it's going to be a good one. Toronto, Canada, YYZ plays host to the return of Sean Strickland as middleweight champion of the world as he squares off against South African stalwart Dricus Du Plessis. Card also features Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva for the vacant women's bantamweight title after Amanda Nunes vacated her title to retire. That's not what we're here for, though. These next few cards are stacked to the brim with fights you have to watch, and this one is no exception. Welcome to Tap Out MMA Talk, y'all. I'm Cooper Burke, and I'm here to take you through the best of mixed martial arts today, tomorrow, and yesterday. From top to bottom, the UFC is coming out of the gates hot. Our first fight to watch is Chris Action Man Curtis and Power Bar Marc-Andre Barriault. This fight has huge implications for the middleweight division, and it's just a fun fight all around. The winner of this fight stays in the middleweight rankings and sets themselves up for a huge 2024 to possibly break into the top 10. Chris Curtis is 30-10-0 overall and 4-2 in the UFC, as he came into the UFC with a ridiculous amount of momentum. He fought 6 times in 2021, winning all, including his first 2 UFC fights. The last few bouts haven't been so kind to Curtis. His last fight was a no contest against Nasruddin Imavov after an accidental clash of heads. After starching Joaquin Buckley, it looked like 2023 was Chris Curtis's year. Unfortunately for him, things didn't really go to plan. In the fight before the no contest, Kelvin Gastelum pushed Curtis to his limit. Curtis was susceptible to Gastelum's movement as he was the larger fighter, and this could pose a problem in the next fight as Barriault is a high movement and cardio kind of guy. Curtis will have to rely on a range-heavy game plan to control the tempo of the fight. If he can't control Barriault's range, it's imperative that he avoid getting cut off and cornered. He has to give himself enough room to work and string combinations together. Barriault has a very strong chin, so Curtis has to work on banking points in the eyes of the judges. Clinch work also doesn't bode well for Curtis, as Barriault is extremely strong and powerful for 185 pounds. Just ask Eric Anders, former standout Alabama linebacker. Curtis needs to take advantage of Barriault's forward-moving style and hit him with straight shots to preserve that range. Barriault is unlikely to move out of the way, and instead will take shot after shot, something that will pay huge dividends down the road for Curtis. Let's take a look at Marc-Andre Barriault, sporting one of the coolest nicknames in mixed martial arts, Power Bar. The Canadian returns to his home nation for the second time in 2 fights to take on Curtis. His last bout came in June, as he outworked Eric Anders from bell to bell in an exciting bout. The Quebec native is 16-6-0 overall, but he sports a middling UFC record that doesn't do him justice. Obviously, if he's fighting for a ranking, he's a much more complete and evolved fighter than he gets credit for. He lost his first 3 bouts in the promotion to Andrew Sanchez, Christoph Yatko, and Jung Young Park, all by decision. He's improved leaps and bounds since then, though, as he's picked up wins over Abu Azaitar, Dolce Langambula, Jordan Wright, and Julian Marquez. Barriault put his power on display when he dispatched Marquez by standing TKO in the second round, and he even dropped Eric Anders in their fight. This power must show up again if he wants to defeat Curtis and take his place in the middleweight rankings. He made heavy use of the right body kick to right hand combination, and you can expect him to go back to the well again with this. His takedown defense leaves a lot to be desired. This shouldn't be a problem with the dynamic striking first style that Chris Curtis brings. Barriault's use of body shots plays in his favor in this fight. It'll force Curtis to drop his hands and open up head combinations. It also pays dividends in another manner. Body shots tend to tire out fighters. As we know, Barriault has some of the best cardio and energy levels at 185 pounds, and he's going to try and outwork Curtis, imposing his will on him with forward pressure. Knees. Another favorite of Barriault could mix up the tempo of the fight on the feet. By using knees up the middle, Barriault opens up potential defensive holes in Curtis's game, and he can raise the eye level of Curtis, opening up opportunities for takedowns. More likely than not, this fight is going to be a bell-to-bell war and an early fight of the night contender. Next down the list is the featherweight scrap, featuring one of the most exciting fighters in the division in Charles Air Jourdain. He squares up against another extremely talented prospect in Sean the Sniper Woodson. Woodson is 10-1-1 overall and 4-1-1 in the UFC, winning each of his last 3 fights, not counting the split draw. That fight was a weird one, as his opponent dropped Woodson and had him in a world of trouble. Saldana could have just finished him from the ground, but instead opted for a bizarre illegal knee to a downed opponent, but she was then deducted a point for. This led to a split draw, with one scorecard going to each fighter, and the other a draw due to the point deduction. Regardless, Woodson survived and went on to outclass Denis Buzukja over 3 rounds. He outstruck Buzukja 163-46 and cruised to a unanimous decision victory. Woodson possesses a fantastic striking game, hence the nickname Sniper. He even took out Terrence McKinney by a flying knee in his appearance on Dana White's Contender Series. He is as dynamic and explosive on the feet as they come, and that's what makes this bout such a fun one. He has a clear advantage in reach over Jourdain, as Jourdain is only 5'9" and has a reach of 69 inches, while Woodson is huge for the featherweight division at 6'2" and a 78-inch reach. The reach advantage allows Woodson to do what he does best: sit back and snipe at range. He isn't picking Jourdain apart by any means, though. Woodson hits hard for 145 pounds, and it will be up to Jourdain to weather the storm like he always has. Woodson needs to mix up combinations to keep Jourdain on his toes, and vary the power on his shots to mess with the timing and rhythm of Jourdain. Then, he can set up the big put-away shot with a clean combination. Jourdain is another scrappy Canadian who makes for an entertaining fighter, coming in with a record of 16-5-1. 6-5-1 in the UFC. He went on a two-fight losing skid against Shane Burgos and Nathaniel Wood. Those fights were action from start to finish. Many things can be said about Jourdain, but he's not a boring fighter. As of late, he has turned it around, winning 2 on the bounce. The first came in one of the weirdest fights of the year, as he defeated Kron Gracie of legendary BJJ lineage. Throughout the fight, Gracie refused to stand up with Jourdain, and so he scooted around on his back, lashing out like a crab at Jourdain's legs. Managing distance is important for Jourdain, as he has to establish that he can get inside Woodson's striking range and cause damage. Leg kicks are imperative to limit Woodson's movement, and it has the added bonus of banking points with the judge. It establishes his game plan early, and it leaves his opponent Woodson immobile and allows Jourdain to throw shot after shot. He isn't known as the hardest hitter, as he lays off on most of his shots, but he has an extra gear there if he needs one. Last but not least, way down on the card, we have a flyweight bout that isn't garnering too much attention: Malcolm Gordon versus Jimmy Flick. Flick started his UFC career off with a bang after he defeated Cody Durden by flying triangle submission. However, since then, things have slowed down significantly for the Brick. He is 16-7-0 overall, and looked to be one of the most electric prospects the UFC had found at flyweight. His next 2 fights shaved off some of that momentum, though, as he suffered 2 ground-and-pound losses to Charles Johnson and Alessandro Costa, respectively. His next opponent, Malcolm Gordon, has struggled on the feet recently. Jimmy Flick has plus grappling skills, some of the best in the division, and they have to come in handy against a smart grappler like Gordon. Flick has the smaller reach and is the smaller fighter, so he will have to set up a body triangle that restricts the movement of Gordon. He can keep Gordon from establishing grappling supremacy with his longer limbs. Proceeding from there, he needs to set up a submission, taking advantage of the opportunity to grab Gordon's longer limbs for an armbar or triangle choke. All else failing, if Flick has made marked improvements on the feet, he can go from there, being that Gordon is a very poor striker. This is often what happens in fights between 2 cracks. Their skills cancel each other out, and they end up standing up. For Malcolm X Gordon, it is do or die time. The 33-year-old Canadian is 0-2 in his last 2 fights, 14-7-0 overall. His last time out, he missed weight in his first round KO loss to Jake Hadley. The loss to Jimmy Flick likely means the end of his UFC career, as he would fall to 2-6 in his time in the octagon. His game plan is simple. He has to do what he does best. Gordon needs to use his reach advantage on the ground to isolate the hands of Jimmy Flick and gain wrist control, and then go for a choke once in an advantageous position. However, he has to be careful. Flick is a great grappler in his own right, and almost certainly has him beat standing up. If Gordon wants to make this happen, he has to control every moment of the fight on the ground, and make it clear to Flick that they are in his world. Otherwise, it will be the last the UFC sees of Gordon for a while. Don't expect Gordon or Flick to go out easy. There is a reason they got put on this card.